How can a man stay good when the woman he married treats his pain like a joke? That's my story. I'm Clay Maddox, 41, and that is exactly what my wife did to me. She had an affair, lied, hid her phone like it was national security, and when the truth finally punched me in the gut, she looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Clay, maybe you're just too weak to move on." That was the moment I realized our marriage wasn't broken. It was dead, and I'd been the only one trying to save it. Life's too damn short to suffer for someone who enjoys watching you hurt. If you've ever felt betrayal like this, drop enough, hit subscribe, and stay with me, because I'm about to tell you everything. Before the affair, before the lies, I was just a blue-collar guy who liked simple things. I pour concrete and swing a hammer for a living. Early shifts, steel-toe boots, coffee in a thermos, hands so beat up the soap never really gets them clean. That was my life. I met Sierra at a buddy's backyard cookout in Austin. Hot grill, cheap beer, kids running around with water guns. She laughed at some dumb joke I made, and for a second the whole yard just blurred out. That laugh felt like home, like maybe all the hard days finally led somewhere. We started talking, then dating. Then it was Sundays at church, tacos after, late-night drives with the windows down and her feet on the dash. In 2021, we got married. In 2022, our son Eli showed up and turned my world inside out in the best way. For a while, we were good. Busy, tired, broke sometimes, but good. I thought the tired looks on her face were just motherhood. The sighs were just stress. Then one day, I noticed it wasn't just tired. It was distance. And her eyes didn't light up when I walked in the room anymore. Something was fading. I just didn't know how fast. The first red flag wasn't some big dramatic scene. It was her phone. Always face down. Always on silent. We'd be on the couch, some show playing in the background. Her screen would light up and she'd smile, one of those small, private smiles, and then flip the phone over like it burned. I'd ask, "Who's that?" And she'd shrug. "Just friends from high school? Nothing." Snapchat became her new hobby. Little ghost icon lighting up over and over. Streaks, filters, inside jokes I wasn't part of. I'd be changing Eli's diaper, and she'd be in the kitchen, laughing at a screen instead of with me. Part of me knew. The other part was busy making excuses. She's just blowing off steam. She's stressed. Don't be that jealous guy. One night, both our phones were on the counter. Mine buzzed. So did hers. I picked up the wrong one without thinking. The lock screen was flooded. Names I didn't know. Bitmoji faces. Notification after notification stacking on top of each other like a bad joke. My stomach dropped, but my thumb moved on its own. I unlocked it. What I saw wasn't just friends. It was hundreds of messages from men I'd never even heard of. I wish I could tell you I blew up right then. That I threw her phone against the wall, packed her bags, walked out like some movie hero. I didn't. I locked the screen, put the phone back exactly where it was, sat there feeling my pulse in my teeth. Every instinct in me was screaming, but one thought cut through all the noise. If I blow this up, what happens to Eli? So I swallowed it. I told myself there had to be some explanation. Old messages, stupid flirting, nothing physical. I grabbed onto any word that made it hurt less. That night, I didn't crawl into bed next to her. I pulled a blanket off the back of the couch and laid down in the living room. The cushions were lumpy, the AC kicked on and off, the house creaked like it was complaining. "I stayed for my son," I repeated in my head, like a prayer and a sentence at the same time. Days turned into weeks of couch sleep. Same house, same roof, but it stopped feeling like a home. It felt like a cheap motel where my body stayed, and my heart checked out. Still, I whispered to myself, tomorrow will be better. But tomorrow came, and so did the truth. Tomorrow will be better carried me all the way to my birthday. Nothing fancy, just another Tuesday. I worked a full shift, came home covered in dust, hoping for, I don't know, a cake, a quiet dinner, maybe one night where we pretended to be us again. She said, "Happy birthday," gave me a quick hug, then spent most of the evening glued to her phone, laughing, smiling at a screen I couldn't see. I ended up in the garage with a cold beer, the door cracked open, radio mumbling some sad country song about losing everything that matters, real on-the-nose stuff. My phone buzzed on the workbench. Hers lit up right beside it. Habit made me glance over. On her screen, a preview popped up from some guy I didn't know. Miss you. 2 words. That's all it took. My heart didn't just sink, it hit the concrete. Every late night, every silent dinner, every time she turned her phone face down, they all lined up like dominoes in my head. I could have stormed in right then. I didn't. I tightened my grip around the bottle, stared at that little line of text, and made myself a quiet promise. Tomorrow, I'm going to ask. Tomorrow. The tomorrow I kept promising myself finally showed up. We were in the kitchen. Eli was napping. No TV, no music, just the sound of the fridge humming. My heart was banging like a hammer in my chest. Can we talk for real? I asked. She didn't even look up from her phone. You're overreacting, Clay. I swallowed. Explain the photos, the messages, the miss you on my birthday. She sighed like I was a kid throwing a fit, rolled her eyes. That's old. You're stuck in the past. You really need to let this go. It's not healthy. That word hit me harder than any insult. Unhealthy. Stuck. Overreacting. Suddenly it wasn't about what she'd done. It was about what was supposedly wrong with me for caring. I stood there with proof in my hand and somehow still felt like I was on trial. My brain knew this was twisted, but my chest clenched up like maybe she was right. First time I heard that kind of therapy talk used like a weapon, not to heal, to shut me up. And for the first time, I didn't yell. I went quiet. After that, I started therapy. If I was really stuck in the past, I wanted to fix it. I Googled counselors between job sites, made an appointment on my lunch break, sat in a small office that smelled like coffee and hand sanitizer. We talked about breathing, grounding, letting go. I learned words like triggers, attachment, boundaries. The therapist asked about my childhood, my dad, why I avoid conflict. It was uncomfortable, but it made sense. I'd come home and try to use what I learned. I feel hurt when you hide your phone. I need honesty to feel safe. She'd roll her eyes and say, God, Clay, can you stop trauma dumping on me every time I walk in the room? Trauma dumping. Overreacting. Stuck in the past. She tossed those phrases out like grenades. I went to therapy to understand my pain. Somewhere along the line, I started wondering if my pain was the problem. Not the cheating, not the lies. Me. I caught myself staring at the bathroom mirror one night, asking out loud, maybe I'm the problem. Maybe if I was stronger, cooler, less sensitive. That's how it works, by the way. You don't just get betrayed. You get talked into believing you deserved it. And that belief almost broke me. After a while, I stopped trusting my own gut and started trusting apps instead. Life 360 became my second pair of eyes. One Friday night, she said, girls' night, don't wait up. Hair done, nails done, that perfume she never wore for me anymore. I told myself not to read into it. Around 11 p.m., I checked the app. Her little circle was across town. Fine. Restaurant area, cool, midnight, 1 a.m., 2. Then suddenly, location unavailable. That gray icon hit harder than any punch. I called, no answer. Texted, you good? 30 minutes, an hour, nothing. My mind filled in every blank with the worst possible picture. Somewhere around 3:30, the app blinked back to life. By 5 a.m., she was back at her friend's place. Like nothing happened. Like I was crazy for even noticing. I lay on the couch under that thin Walmart blanket, and it felt like concrete poured over my chest. Heavy, cold, hard to breathe. I opened my phone, went to the calendar, put a little dot on that date and typed, location went dark, no answer. First time I documented it for real, not just in my head. A couple days after that, we went to Sunday service like we were still a normal family. I carried Eli on my hip, his little hand tangled in my beard, head on my shoulder. He smelled like cereal and baby shampoo. That part of my life still felt pure. Sierra walked a few steps ahead, scrolling her phone even on the church steps. While people smiled and said good morning, she was half there, half in whatever world lit up her screen. During worship, I held Eli and mumbled through the songs. I glanced at my wedding ring. It used to feel solid, like a promise. That morning it felt cold, like metal. Just metal. When service ended, she slipped out to the lobby to take a call. I watched her through the glass doors, laughing at something on her phone while I rocked our son in my arms. The thought hit me so clean it almost made me sway. We're not husband and wife, we're roommates with a ring, sharing a kid, sharing bills, sharing air, but not sharing a life. I forced a smile when someone asked how we were doing. Inside, I felt something crack. Not my heart, my self-respect. After a few months of feeling like the crazy one, I switched counselors. The new guy wasn't soft. No scented candles, no fake smile, just a worn-out chair, a legal pad, and a man who looked like he'd seen some things. I laid it all out. The phone, the messages, the gaslighting, the you're stuck in the past, the you're overreacting, the nights on the couch, the way my chest stayed tight even when nothing was happening. He listened, didn't interrupt. Just let me empty the whole bucket. Then he leaned forward and asked one question nobody had asked me yet. Clay, what do you want? I sat there, staring at the floor. It felt like a trick. Want? I'd been living in what she wanted for so long, I'd forgotten I was allowed to want anything. The word slipped out of my mouth before I could dress it up. Respect. He nodded, slow. Then you're going to have to require it. Require it. Not beg for it. Not hope for it. Require it. My hand was shaking, but I nodded back. That was the first tiny line I drew in the sand, even if it was only in my own head. But soon, I'd have to say it out loud. A few nights later, I tried to draw that line out loud. Eli was asleep. Dishes were done. She was on the couch, scrolling like always. My heart was thumping so hard I could feel it in my neck. I sat down across from her and said as calmly as I could, I need something if we're going to keep doing this. She barely glanced up. What now? No more secrets, I said. Open phones, both of us, anytime, no hiding. She actually laughed, a short, mean little laugh. What are you, a cop? She said. I held her gaze. No, I'm your husband. At least, I'm trying to be. Her face hardened. You're paranoid, Clay. This is what I mean. You obsess. You're making drama out of nothing. I shook my head. If it's nothing, then it shouldn't be a problem. Silence. Just that look. Cold, annoyed, like I was a chore. Then she dropped the line that burned into my brain. If you were really a man, you'd just move on. Not, I'm sorry. Not, let's fix this. Just a cheap shot at my manhood instead of any accountability. I felt my jaw lock. I didn't yell. I just exhaled and realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was who she'd decided to be. When she said, if you were really a man, you'd just move on, something in me went quiet. Not dramatic, just done. I pushed back from the table, chair scraping the floor louder than I meant. The air in that kitchen felt thick and sour. I didn't trust myself to say another word without exploding, so I didn't. I walked out to the garage, like I always did when I needed somewhere to put my anger. Concrete floor, old tools, smell of oil. It was the only room in the house that still felt like mine. A second later, I heard small feet on the tile. Daddy? Eli stood there in the doorway with his little blanket dragging behind him, big brown eyes trying to read my face. I scooped him up without thinking. He rested his head on my shoulder, and for a moment, the noise in my head stopped. I stayed for my son, I told myself. Not for her. Not for some fairy tale marriage that only existed in my memory. For him. Then he pulled back and really looked at me, and in his eyes I saw it. My own face, but smaller. Tired. Worn down. Confused. That's when it hit me. He was learning how to be a man by watching this. After that night in the garage, something shifted. Love, fear, therapy phrases, all of it got pushed to the side. I wanted facts. Cold, boring, undeniable facts. So one afternoon while she was out running errands, I logged into our phone account, just to check the bill. That's what I told myself. It wasn't hard to spot. Same number, over and over, morning, lunch, late at night, right before girls' night, right before my birthday. Every day, like clockwork. Each timestamp felt like a nail driven right into my chest. I scrolled back months and it didn't stop. Holidays, weekends, days she told me she was exhausted and needed space. I stared at that number until it blurred. Then I did what any man who's had enough does. I called it. 1 ring, 2, voicemail. No name, just a generic message. Leave a message. This mailbox is full. Of course it is. I hung up and typed the number into Google, into Facebook, into any search bar that would take it. Nothing at first. Then a comment thread, a tag, a photo, a man's face, different city, same area code. I didn't know him, but he knew my wife. That's how I learned his name. But what I didn't know yet was how far it had already gone. Once I knew his name, something strange happened. I didn't rage, I didn't smash anything, I just cooled off. That night I came home from work, washed my hands, and started dinner like it was any other day. Chicken in the pan, vegetables on the cutting board, knife hitting the board in a slow, steady rhythm. No small talk, no questions. She hovered around the kitchen, watching me like she was waiting for a blow-up that never came. After a while, she said, almost relieved, "You're finally calm." I stirred the pan, kept my eyes on the food. "Or," I said, "I'm finally done." She froze for a second, just long enough for the words to land. The air between us went tight, thin, like cold metal stretched to the breaking point. She tried to brush it off. "You're being dramatic." I wasn't. I set the plates down, sat at the table, and ate my food in silence. Not to punish her, not to manipulate. I was just done begging for basic respect. On the outside, everything looked normal. 2 adults having dinner. On the inside, something had shifted. I wasn't chasing her approval anymore. I was counting exits. A couple days after that, I brought up counseling. Not the individual kind. We'd already done the Clay fix-yourself routine. I waited until Eli was in bed. We were in the living room, same old distance between us on the couch. TV on low, some show neither of us was really watching. "I think we need marriage counseling," I said. She didn't even hesitate. "You need it, not us." I felt that word cut, you, like I was a separate problem to be managed. "Us is me and you," I said quietly. "There is no you problem and us magically fine. If we're staying married, we both sit in that room." She grabbed her phone, stood up. "I'm not wasting my time so some stranger can tell me you're sensitive." Then she walked down the hall. A second later, the bedroom door slammed. Not hard enough to break anything. Just hard enough to send a message. Conversation over. I sat there on that couch in my own house and realized how alone a man can be with another body 10 steps away. People talk about being single like it's the loneliest thing in the world. They've never been married like this. It all really snapped at a friend's get-together. We were at this long table. Couples, wine, fake laughter. The kind of night where everybody pretends their marriage is fine. Someone made a joke about no one's perfect, and people started tossing around little confessions. Forgot an anniversary, yelled at the kids, stupid stuff. Then Sierra laughed and said, "Well, Clay has trust issues, but we're working on it." Everyone chuckled. It was light, harmless, supposed to be. And I don't know what switch flipped in me, but I heard myself say, clear as day, "At least I never cheated." The whole table froze, forks halfway to mouths, eyes darting between us. She went pale, then forced a laugh. "He's just joking," she said, squeezing my arm a little too hard under the table. We made it through dessert on autopilot. On the drive home, she didn't say a word. Neither did I. That night, she went to cool off at a friend's place. Around 1 a.m., I checked Life 360. She was there. At 2 a.m., 3 a.m., the app showed nothing. No location for 3 hours. At 5 a.m., she was suddenly back at the friend's. In my head, the dots started to connect, and they lined up straight to him. She came home later that morning like a storm that had already passed. Hair a mess, makeup smeared just enough to notice, moving slow like her bones were tired. Not hungover tired. Different. I was in the kitchen pouring cereal for Eli when she walked in. She wouldn't quite meet my eyes, just went straight for the coffee. "Rough night?" I asked. "Didn't sleep much," she muttered. I watched her for a second, then said the thing sitting on my tongue since 2 a.m. "Where were you when Life 360 went dark?" She blew on her coffee, didn't look up. "At my friend's. You can ask her kid if you don't believe me. He was there. 10 years old. Go interrogate him if that makes you feel better." That hit dirty. She knew I'd never drag some kid into this. I just stared at her. That's when I caught it. A scent I didn't recognize. Not my cologne, not mine and not hers. A different aftershave, faint but there, clinging to her shirt. It wasn't just the app anymore, or the texts, or the lies. Something in me snapped, not loud, not dramatic, just a clean break. It wasn't suspicion now, it was certainty. Whatever trust I had left, it broke right there, standing by the kitchen sink. But the worst part? I still wasn't done breaking. Easter Sunday was supposed to be about family. She came into the kitchen all bright and busy, said, "I'll take Eli to the park, egg hunt, let you rest." On paper, it sounded kind. I wanted to believe it was. They left in a rush, Eli in his little sneakers, basket in hand, her phone already in her back pocket. About 20 minutes later, I checked Life 360 out of habit. Location unavailable. My stomach tightened, but I told myself, not today. Don't ruin Easter for your kid. I tried to mow the lawn, clean the counters, anything to keep from refreshing that screen every 5 minutes. Hours passed. Late afternoon, the door opened. Eli came running in, face flushed, hair messy, clutching a plastic toy I'd never seen before. "Look, Daddy," he yelled. "Got it from Mommy's friend's kids." Everything in me went still. Mommies, friends, kids. Not just her, not just Eli. Her and his children. It felt like the walls of the house shifted an inch to the left, like the truth had finally walked in without knocking. I smiled at Eli, told him it was cool, ruffled his hair. Inside, it felt like a cold wind had blown straight through my chest. The suspicion I'd been fighting? It just got a face. And a family. When Eli ran off to play, I found her in the hallway scrolling like nothing unusual had happened. "How was the park?" I asked. "Fun," she said. "He had a great time." "With who?" I pushed. "He said he played with your friend's kids." She didn't flinch. "Yeah, their mom was there, we just bumped into them." That might have worked on another man, but I already knew something she didn't think I'd remember. His ex-wife can't stand Sierra, hates her guts, wouldn't stand in the same grocery aisle, let alone share a sweet little park moment with her and my son. Her story didn't hold for more than 2 seconds. I stared at her. She stared back, chin up, daring me to call her out in front of our kid. I didn't. I swallowed it, for the moment. That night, after Eli was asleep, she opened a bottle of wine, then another. By midnight, she was loose-tongued, that mean, tipsy laugh I'd grown to dread. Somewhere between ranting about how everyone judges her and how I never let things go, she slipped. "Fine," she slurred. "He was there. Happy now?" There it was. No denial, no spin, just the truth, drunk and ugly. And if she'd admit that, I knew there was more coming I hadn't heard yet. She was leaning against the counter, glass in hand, cheeks flushed from the wine when it came out. "Okay," she said, laughing a little. "He was there. Happy now?" No apology, no shame, just that crooked, careless smile, like we were talking about forgetting to take the trash out, not her sneaking our son around the man she'd been cheating with. I stared at her and tried to line her up with the woman I married, the girl at the cookout, the wife in the white dress, the new mom crying in the hospital bed holding Eli. But all I could see was a stranger who treated my pain like background noise. She looked at me like I was pathetic for still caring. Something broke in that moment, and it wasn't just my heart, it was my dignity, because I suddenly saw myself from the outside, a man sleeping on the couch, being lied to, gaslit, blamed, still standing there, hoping she'd choose him. I didn't recognize her anymore. Worse, I didn't recognize me. I'd turned into a version of myself I never thought I'd be, a man who let someone step on his soul and then said, "Thank you for staying." That version had to die, and in his place, someone else had to rise. The next morning, I didn't argue. I didn't bring up Easter, or the park, or that drunk half confession. I got in my truck, drove to the nearest strip mall, sat in the parking lot, and Googled family law attorney with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. The guy I found wasn't warm or gentle. I didn't need warm. I needed real. I told him everything in bullet points, not feelings. Affairs, timeline, Life 360, messages, the other guy, our son. He listened and said one sentence that cut cleaner than any therapy phrase I'd heard. First thing, Clay, document everything. So I did. I screenshotted texts, saved phone records, wrote dates and times in a notebook, printed bank statements and stuck them in a folder with her name on it. I opened a separate bank account in my name only, changed the password on my email, stopped telling her every move I made. For the first time in a long time, my breathing slowed down instead of speeding up. This wasn't about revenge. It was about control of my life, my money, my future, and my time with my son. She'd had all the power for years. That day, quietly, I started taking it back. Once the legal dust settled in my head, a new fear took over. Not, what if I lose her? I was past that. It was, what if I lose Eli? I'd heard enough horror stories. Dads getting every other weekend, holidays cut in half, reduced to visitors in their own kids' lives. I wasn't perfect, but I wasn't some deadbeat. I changed diapers, did school runs, made waffles on Saturdays. I was there. So I started reading. State custody laws, fathers' rights forums, stories from men who'd fought and men who'd given up. It was ugly, but it was real. My attorney told me, judges like structure, stability, show them you're that. So one night at the kitchen table, after everyone was asleep, I drafted a parenting plan on a yellow legal pad. Pickups, drop-offs, holidays, bedtimes, school. The boring, everyday stuff that actually makes a childhood. Then I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I bowed my head and prayed. Not, God fix my marriage, just, God help me be the dad he needs no matter what this costs me. When I lifted my head, the fear was still there, but for the first time, courage was sitting next to it, and I chose courage. After I had the plan on paper and the folder of evidence in my truck, there was only one thing left to say out loud. I think we need to separate for a while. I said it at the kitchen table, same place we used to eat takeout and talk about baby names. Eli was at a neighbor's house. No distractions, no excuses. She didn't blink. She just snorted. Oh my God, Clay. Grow up. Move on. You're still on this? I shook my head. My voice was steady. Respect is non-negotiable. You crossed lines you can't uncross. I can't pretend this is normal anymore. She leaned back, arms crossed, eyes hard. You're really going to blow up your family because you're in your feelings? There was a time that sentence would have wrecked me. Now, it just sounded cheap. I'm not blowing it up, I said quietly. I'm just refusing to live in the wreckage. No yelling, no slammed fists, just cold clarity. She grabbed her phone, stood up, and walked down the hallway. The bedroom door closed with a soft final click. Not a slam, not drama, just the sound of something coming unplugged. That was the moment the line between us stopped flickering. Our marriage didn't end in a big explosion. It bled out in that silence. But that silence was the loudest truth I'd ever heard. That night, I didn't sleep on the couch. I grabbed a pillow, a blanket, and my keys. Walked past our bedroom door without looking in, out the front door. I climbed into my truck parked in the driveway and shut the door. It was quiet in that way only late-night suburbs can be. Just crickets, a distant dog, the hum of somebody's AC unit. I leaned the seat back and stared through the windshield at the sky. A few stars, some streetlight glow, nothing special, but it felt more honest than anything inside that house. I thought about manhood and self-respect, two words people throw around like they're simple. My dad was old school. He used to tell me, "A promise is a promise, son. You don't walk out when it gets hard." I believed that, lived by it. But he never told me what to do when someone burns the promise right in front of you, laughs about the ashes, then tells you you're weak for choking on the smoke. Lying there in that truck, seatbelt digging into my side, neck already sore, I realized something. I'd kept my promise to the marriage. I just hadn't kept any to myself. So I made a new one, right there under that ugly orange streetlight. I will not keep sacrificing myself for someone who enjoys watching me bleed. And this time, I intended to keep it. Once I made that promise in the truck, the next step was simple and brutal. Stop hiding it. For years I'd covered for us, brushed off questions with, "We're fine," blamed stress, work, the baby, anything but the truth. I protected her image while mine quietly rotted. No more. I started with my parents, sat at their kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that went cold while I talked. I told them about the messages, the other man, the lies, the Easter Park thing, the way she used therapy words as weapons. I didn't call her names. I didn't embellish. I just told the truth. My mom's eyes filled up. My dad went quiet in that dangerous way men do when they're holding back a lot. He didn't say stay or go. He said, "You don't deserve that, son." Her side of the family was messier. Some defended her. Some stayed neutral. But a couple of them, the ones who'd seen things over the years, reached out privately. "I'm sorry, Clay. We knew something was off." For the first time in a long time, I felt seen. Not as the overreacting husband, not as the weak guy who couldn't move on, just as a man who'd been lied to and finally said, "Enough." And knowing I wasn't completely alone, that gave me just enough strength for what had to come next. Once family knew, it didn't take long for the story to hit the place everyone lives now. Facebook, Instagram, the group chats. She posted first, a long paragraph about healing, outgrowing people, and some men just can't let go of the past. No names, of course. Just enough details so anyone who knew us would know exactly who she meant. He's stuck in his trauma. He refuses to move on. I tried everything, but you can't help someone who doesn't want to heal. Her friends filled the comments with hearts and "You deserve better" and "Proud of you, Queen." A few shared it. One even wrote, "Some men just love to play the victim." There it was. Divorce shaming, dressed up as empowerment. My phone buzzed with screenshots from people who actually knew me. "You see this? You okay, man?" I didn't clap back. I didn't write my own post. I saved every screenshot, every comment, every little digital knife. When I showed my lawyer, he skimmed through, smirked, and said, "Good. This helps you more than it helps her." Being painted as the villain hurt, but for the first time, the pain didn't knock me down. It just made me surer of one thing. I was done living in her version of the story. After the dust-up online, I sat alone at the kitchen table one night with a blank piece of paper in front of me. No phone, no TV, just a pen and the question that had been haunting me for months. Is this marriage salvageable? Not the marriage I wished we had. The one we actually had. Cheating, lies, gaslighting, public shaming, zero remorse. I wrote the question at the top of the page and stared at it. Then I wrote the answer right underneath. Not without respect. And in this house, respect was gone, dead, buried. Love, maybe some twisted version of it, was still limping around in the background. History? Plenty. Shared memories? A lot. But respect? No. I picked up the pen and it didn't feel heavy this time. Line by line, I filled out the divorce paperwork. Name, date, grounds. The clinical language almost made it feel like it was happening to someone else. When I got to the signature line, my hand didn't shake. The ink went down smooth. And with that signature, I stopped bleeding for good. People say signing those papers will break you. Me? I felt lighter, not happy, not celebrating. Just a quiet, steady relief, like finally putting down a weight I'd been pretending I could still carry. Once the papers were signed, my biggest fear wasn't being alone. It was Eli. How do you explain to a 3-year-old that the house is breaking in half, but his world isn't supposed to? One evening, I sat with him on the living room floor, toy cars scattered everywhere, cars crashing, engines, vroom sounds, his whole universe right there on the rug. I picked him up, sat him on my lap, his little back against my chest. "Hey, buddy," I said softly. "Daddy loves you, always. You know that?" He nodded like I'd just asked if he wanted ice cream. "Yeah," I swallowed. "Things are going to change a little. Daddy might not sleep here all the time, but you're going to see me every week. I'm not going anywhere, okay? He didn't understand the details. He didn't have to. He just turned around, wrapped his arms around my neck, and said, "Okay, Daddy." Then he pressed one of his toy cars into my hand. "This one stays with you." I listened to his breathing, warm and steady on my shoulder, and something inside me locked into place. I wasn't just leaving a marriage, I was staying a father. And that gave me more strength than any pep talk ever could. After the shock of the papers wore off, she tried a different move. One night she came into the living room, softer than I'd seen her in months. No claws out, no attitude, just this careful, practiced vulnerability. "Can we talk?" she asked. I nodded. She sat down across from me, twisted her hands a little, and said, "We don't have to do this, you know. We could start over, wipe the slate clean. Take me back, Clay. For Eli. For us." If you'd offered me that 6 months earlier, I would have leapt at it, ignored every red flag, and sprinted right back into the fire. But now, I'd seen the messages, the lies, the posts, and I'd also seen something else, her phone still lighting up with his name. She was asking for another chance with one hand, texting him with the other. I looked her in the eye and said quietly, "No more begging for love." She blinked. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm done trying to earn what should have been there from the start." Her eyes narrowed, that old familiar anger flashing back. "You'll regret this." Maybe, maybe not. But for the first time, her words didn't hook into me. I stood up, walked past her, and didn't look back. And nothing in me moved to follow her anymore. After I turned her down, the sweetness vanished. We were in the hallway, me with my folder in hand, her blocking the way like a final checkpoint. "You'll crawl back," she said, eyes hard. "You always do. You get mad, you pout, then you come running. You can't do life without me, Clay." There was a time she'd be right. Not anymore. "Watch me stand," I said, not loud, not dramatic, not just steady. She gave this little bitter laugh like I'd told a bad joke. "You're not built for this. You'll be lonely, broke, a weekend dad. You'll fold." I didn't answer. I just shifted the folder in my hand, the one with the evidence, the parenting plan, the signed papers. Then I walked past her. The front door closed behind me with a soft click, not a slam. The air outside felt different, cooler, cleaner. I drove straight to my lawyer's office, handed over the signed forms, watched the receptionist stamp, scan, sort, turn my entire life into case numbers and court dates. When I walked back out to the parking lot, the sun was too bright, my chest too tight. But the papers were filed. The point of no return was behind me now, and the real fight was ahead. Once the court date got set, everything stopped being theory. This wasn't just, "maybe we'll separate" anymore. It was real. Deadlines, hearings, forms, and in the middle of all that legal noise was one thing I refused to mess up: custody. My attorney went over it with me in plain English. Judges like stability, predictability. Show them you have a plan that keeps Eli's life steady. So I sat down and treated it like a job I couldn't afford to lose. I wrote out a detailed custody schedule: pickups, drop-offs, school days, weekends, holidays. No vague, "we'll figure it out." Clear times, clear places, clear responsibilities. I added a reasonable radius so she couldn't just pack up and move him 3 states away on a whim. I bought a small notebook, turned it into a parenting log. Not to spy, just to document. When I picked him up, when I dropped him off, what we did, how he was. I practiced little routines: dinner, bath, bedtime, mornings with just us. I learned how to pack his bag right, how to handle meltdowns solo, how to make the house feel like his home too, not just Dad's place. Was I scared? Yeah. But more than scared, I was determined. If everything else in my life had to fall apart, fine. Eli's world was going to be the steady part, even if I had to rebuild it from rubble. The night before court, sleep never even tried to show up. I sat at the little kitchen table in my one-bedroom place, stacks of papers and manila folders pushed off to the side. Just me, a cheap pen, and a blank sheet of notebook paper. I started writing a letter to the old version of myself. "Dear Clay," I wrote, "next time you see the first red flag, Run sooner. Don't wait for your heart to be proof. The words poured out. Apologies. Warnings. Things I wished someone had told me 10 years ago. I filled the page, then another. When I was done, I read it back. And something clicked. I didn't need to send this letter into the past. The man who needed to hear it was already sitting there, alive, awake, breathing. I tore the pages down the middle, then again, dropped the pieces in the trash. The guy who stayed on the couch, who begged for love, who believed every excuse, he'd had his turn. The man getting up for court in a few hours? He stood up. Outside, somewhere down the street, a rooster started crowing. First light slipped under the blinds. For the first time in a long time, morning felt a little like hope. Court isn't like TV. It's colder, quieter. No dramatic music, just hard benches, bad fluorescent lights, and people trying to pretend their lives aren't coming apart in front of strangers. I sat next to my lawyer in a too-stiff shirt, hands folded so they wouldn't shake. Sierra was a few chairs away with hers. We didn't look at each other much. When our case was called, everything narrowed down to that one room. My lawyer did most of the talking. Dates, facts, the affair, the Easter Park incident, the social media posts, the nights Life 360 went dark. He laid it out like a timeline, not an attack. Your Honor, my client is not vindictive, he said. He simply wants a fair custody arrangement and a safe, stable environment for his son. We submitted the logs, phone records, screenshots, my parenting plan. Each piece of paper slid across that desk felt like one more brick in a wall I was finally building to protect myself and Eli. When the judge asked me a direct question, I stood, looked straight ahead, and answered in plain words. No speeches, no tears, just the truth. And for the first time in this whole mess, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I was actually being heard. After court let out, I didn't go home right away. I pulled into this little diner I'd passed 100 times on the way to work but never stopped at. Walked in, took a booth by the window and ordered black coffee because it felt like the right kind of bitter for the day. The sun was cutting through the glass, dust floating in the light, plates clinking, a waitress calling someone, "Hun," fries hissing on a grill. Just life. Regular life. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug and my mind went back to my wedding day. Same sunlight, different room. I'd stood there in a suit that didn't quite fit, staring at Sierra like she was the rest of my future. Sitting in that booth, I realized something hard and simple. The man who said "I do" back then and the man who just walked out of that courtroom, not the same person. The old me thought love meant holding on no matter what it cost. The new me understood sometimes love means letting go before it kills you. I took a sip of coffee, felt the heat run through me, and made a choice. From now on, I pick this man, the one who finally chose himself. A few days later, I was back on the job site. Same old stuff, steel toe boots, dust in the air, hammer in my hand, the kind of work that leaves your muscles sore and your brain quiet. We were framing a house, fresh wood, clean lines, the smell of cut lumber sharp in the air. I measured, marked, swung, repeated. Nail after nail going in straight, boards lining up, walls taking shape where there was nothing an hour before. At some point, I looked down at my hands, scarred, calloused, beat up, and it hit me. I spend my days building things meant to stand. Yet I'd spent years patching up something that collapsed every time the wind blew. The 2x4 in front of me didn't lie. If it was cracked, we tossed it. If it was warped, we didn't frame with it. We didn't shame the hammer. We didn't blame the nails. We just didn't build with rotten wood. I felt this small, unexpected smile tug at my face. Yeah, my marriage was gone. Yeah, my life looked nothing like I planned. But here I was, using the same hands that poured myself into the wrong person, to rebuild something that might finally hold. Me. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I belonged to her story. I belonged to my own. A couple weeks after court, some buddies from work texted me. Bar tonight? First round on us. Newly single celebration, man. A year ago, I would have gone just to numb everything for a few hours. Cheap beer, loud music, fake laughs, anything to not think. I looked at my phone, then at the clock. It was my night with Eli. Can't, I wrote back. Eli tonight. I picked him up, grabbed a cheap pizza on the way home, and we laid it out right on the coffee table. Greasy slices, paper plates, cartoon movie blaring a little too loud. He climbed into my lap with a mouthful of cheese and said, "Daddy, faster," pointing at his toy car. So I put him down, got on my knees, and pushed that little car around the living room like it was the Indy 500. He laughed so hard he couldn't breathe, that high kid laugh that makes everything else shut up. No bar stool in the world beats that sound. At some point, I looked around. Messy apartment, toys everywhere, half-eaten pizza, cartoon credits rolling, and it hit me. This isn't the broken home I was scared of. This is home. Not perfect, not pretty, but honest. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. Because maybe enough is exactly what home is. Later that night, after Eli knocked out on the couch mid-movie, my phone buzzed. It was her. "I miss the family," the text said. No apology, no ownership, just that. Old me would have jumped on it, read it 10 times, looked for hope in between the words. Thought, maybe this is it. Maybe she's changed. New me just stared at it for a second. I typed back, "Family needs respect." 3 dots popped up like she was about to argue. Then nothing. No reply. No, "You're right." No, "I'm sorry." Just silence. And that silence told me more than any paragraph ever could. I set the phone face down on the table, not like she used to hide things, but because I was done letting that screen run my heart. I pulled up a playlist, hit a song I hadn't listened to in years. Something about starting over, about getting back up when you've been knocked flat. The apartment was dim. My son was snoring lightly 2 feet away. My phone was still silent. And for once, I didn't feel pulled backwards. No fantasy reconciliation, no imaginary version of her finally doing right. Just a clear, steady feeling in my chest. I'm not going back there. Not ever. After everything calmed down on the outside, the inside was still loud. I started scrolling late at night. Forums, comment sections, groups for divorced dads, men dealing with cheating, all the stuff I used to judge but now understood way too well. Same story, different names. Guys in their 30s, 50s, 60s. Blue-collar, white-collar, vets, office guys. Didn't matter. She cheated, said it was my fault. She called me controlling for asking questions. She told everyone I was crazy. I began replying, not as some guru, just as a man who'd been through the same fire. One night, a guy wrote, "Maybe I'm just weak for not getting over it." My fingers moved before my brain could second-guess it. "You're not weak, you're just bleeding. Big difference." There was a long pause, then his little typing bubble came back. "Thank you. No one's ever said it like that." More men chimed in. "Same here." That hit me. I thought I was the only one. We were just pixels on a screen, usernames and profile pictures, but I felt it. For the first time, our pain wasn't just something we carried alone in the dark. It had a language, it had witnesses, and it finally had a voice. One morning, a while after all that, I caught my reflection and actually stopped. For a long time, I'd avoid mirrors unless I had to shave. Every time I looked, I saw the same thing, a hollow version of myself. Dead eyes, slumped shoulders, a guy living on low battery. But this time was different. I was getting ready for work. Plain t-shirt, worn jeans, boots by the door, nothing special. But my face, it didn't look drained, just older, clearer. There was weight in my eyes again, but not the sinking kind. I stood there in the bathroom really looking. No more shell of a man, no more walking apology. I saw a backbone, not perfect, not all healed up. But there. I thought about everything. Her affair, the shame, the couch nights, the court, the truck, the diner, my kid asleep on my chest, the guys online, the choice to walk away. For years, I'd been scared that leaving would break me. Instead, somewhere along the way, it built me. I took one last breath, turned off the bathroom light, grabbed my keys, and opened the front door. This time, I wasn't walking out to escape something. I was walking out as a free man. When you strip all the details away, my story is simple. My wife cheated, and then tried to shame me for not getting over it fast enough. She called me weak, stuck, broken. For a long time, I believed her. I told myself I was staying for my son, but if I'm honest, I was staying because I was scared of starting over, of being alone, of being called the bad guy. What I finally learned is this: respect isn't a bonus. It's the price of admission. Without it, there is no marriage, just a contract and two people slowly dying inside four walls. So I left. Not because I stopped loving my kid, not because I wanted to destroy the family. I left so I wouldn't have to destroy myself to keep pretending we still had one. Life's too damn short to bleed for someone who enjoys watching you hurt. If you take nothing else from this, take this line and keep it in your pocket. I didn't destroy my family. I refused to die inside it. If any part of my story feels like yours, drop enough in the comments, hit subscribe, and stick around. Because this isn't the end. It's the first honest chapter of the rest of my life.